guan?
What a guan?
That's a guan pa.
What a guan? What a guan?
What a guan? Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 10 p.m. on CVM TV.
And that's a guan pa. What a guan?
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Thanks for joining us for CVM News at noon. It's Thursday, July 9, 2026. I'm Akeem Oret, and we begin with the news that two men suspected to be involved in the shooting of a pump attendant on Deanery Road Wednesday afternoon were killed during a police operation on St. John's Road in Spanish Town, St. Catherine. Our newsroom contacted Commanding Officer for the St. Catherine North Police Division, Senior Superintendent Hopton Nicholson, who said the deceased men were involved in the robberies in the area, but he said he couldn't confirm at this time that they were the suspects in Wednesday afternoon's shooting incident. Reports are that around 9 p.m. Wednesday, police acted on intelligence that the men who were being sought in connection with the shooting, as well as a string of gas station robberies, were in the community. Upon arrival, the officers reportedly saw a group of men and identified themselves as police. The men allegedly pulled firearms and opened fire, prompting the officers to return fire. When the shooting subsided, two men were found suffering from gunshot wounds. A firearm was also reportedly recovered at the scene. Earlier that day, video emerged of the robbery that took place at a service station along Deanery Road around 1:36 p.m. The CCTV footage shows a gray Toyota Probox approaching a pump attendant who was next to a gas pump. After a brief interaction with the pump attendant, three men alighted from the vehicle, brandishing what appeared to be firearms before what seemed to be a robbery attempt. The men then appeared to shoot the pump attendant, who fell to the ground. The men went back into the vehicle and fled the scene. In the meantime, a 48-hour curfew has been imposed in the communities of Land Settlement, Royal Flat, Comfort and Broadleaf District in Manchester Police Division. The curfew began at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, July 8, and will remain in effect until 6 p.m. on Friday, July 10. During the curfew, residents within the designated boundaries must remain indoors unless authorized by the member of the security forces in charge of enforcing the order. An earthquake measuring 3.4 on the Richter scale hit Jamaica at 6:20 p.m. on Wednesday, July 8. According to the earthquake unit of the University of the West Indies, the impact was 11 kilometers south of Hope Bay, Portland. It was also reportedly felt in Kingston and St. Andrew. At this time, the Office of the Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, has received no reports of damage. The office is still reminding the public to remain prepared as earthquakes happen without warning. Individuals who felt the earthquake are encouraged to submit reports to the earthquake unit to support seismic monitoring and analysis. To other news now, the government of Jamaica has announced that it is providing humanitarian assistance to the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela in the aftermath of the devastating twin earthquakes that struck the country on June 24, 2026. Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Senator Kamina Jones-Smith, said the decision reflects Jamaica's commitment to regional solidarity and long-standing diplomatic ties between the two nations. The minister stated on Tuesday that although Jamaica is still still in its recovery and rebuilding stage, they have not forgotten the hand of friendship extended to us by Venezuela in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Melissa. As the response shifts from search and rescue to recovery and rebuilding, international rescue teams have begun to withdraw. Meanwhile, families continue to search for missing loved ones, and authorities have commenced the burial of unidentified victims. The government of Jamaica has extended its deepest condolences to the people of Venezuela and reaffirmed its commitment to supporting regional partners in times of crisis. The government says the modular housing program has entered a new phase, with construction and assembly of units now underway. The initiative, introduced in response to widespread damage caused by Hurricane Melissa, had previously been in the assessment and procurement stages. The Prime Minister stated that in the coming months, the construction of bases and assembly of housing units will be sufficiently advanced to allow for the handover process to begin. The government has acknowledged earlier delays due to global shipping challenges, but says those issues have been resolved. It added that strict standards are being maintained to ensure quality and safety. Approximately 1,500 modular houses are currently in Jamaica, with an additional 1,000 units expected to arrive by the end of this month. The Prime Minister's administration also stated that it will not compromise on quality and safety, adding that a rigorous process has been implemented to ensure housing base preparations meet stringent regulatory and environmental standards. The Chinese embassy in Jamaica says Chinese companies operating on the island pose no threat and should not have their lawful rights and interests undermined by Jamaica's cooperation with the United States. The statement follows reports that U.S.-based engineering firm AECOM will conduct a security assessment of Jamaica's 3 major commercial ports. The embassy also clarified that while a Chinese company is a shareholder in the Kingston Freeport terminal, it does not participate in the port's operations, and reaffirmed China's commitment to strengthening ties with Jamaica. A defamation lawsuit filed by Government Minister Darrell Vaz against PNP General Secretary Dr. Dayton Campbell has been settled. This settlement follows early agreements reached with St. Thomas Western MP James Robertson and former MP Othniel Lawrence, who also filed defamation suits against Campbell. As you will hear in this report, the 3 lawsuits stemmed from remarks Campbell made during a PNP conference in July 2023.
The matter between Government Minister Darrell Vaz and People's National Party General Secretary Dr. Dayton Campbell stemmed from statements made by Dr. Campbell at the annual constituency conference of the PNP in Clarendon on July 27, 2023. Now, under the terms of a settlement agreement, Dr. Campbell has signed a written apology, unequivocally withdrawing the statements and acknowledging they have, quote, no foundation in truth and are, quote, categorically false. The agreement further requires Dr. Campbell to record and publish a video apology on his social media platforms by Thursday, July 9, publish the apology in the Jamaica Gleaner and Jamaica Observer, and pay $1.5 million to cover costs associated with the matter. Meanwhile, St. Thomas Western MP James Robertson and former MP, now businessman Othniel Lawrence, also took legal action against Dr. Campbell for similar comments he made at that same political meeting. Robertson and Lawrence claimed the statement suggested they lacked integrity and decency, damaging their political, professional, and personal reputations. Campbell initially denied the allegations, arguing that his comments amounted to fair comment. Now, the attorneys for Robertson and Lawrence, Alexander Williams, announced in the Supreme Court Wednesday that the matter has been settled. Now, the details of their settlement have not been made public, only that the PNP General Secretary issued an apology to the gentleman, which is to be published in the Gleaner. It's understood that a press conference is to be held where the parties will discuss with the media that the matter has been resolved amicably. Dr. Campbell has denied our newsroom's request for comment, while calls to his attorney's phone went unanswered.
We now take a break or live interview after this.
years as the cornerstone of the nation.
Brick by brick, side by side, we've been building dreams all across Jamaica. We're building communities, we're housing generations with trust and care. We light the way with energy. Home starts here, building communities. We're housing generations with heart and hope. We lead the way with energy. The key to your home. The key to your home. The key to your home.
Welcome back to CVM News at noon. A Supreme Court ruling in favor of Government Minister Darrell Vaz in his defamation case against opposition spokesman Dr. Dayton Campbell has sparked a debate about the boundaries of political speech in Jamaica. The court found that statements made by Dr. Campbell during a 2023 press conference were defamatory, awarding damages to Mr. Vaz. The decision has drawn reaction from both the government and the opposition, with some describing it as a vindication for the minister, while others warn of its implications for political discourse. Joining us now is political commentator Damian Gordon. Good afternoon, Mr. Gordon.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
No problem. First of all, what's your reaction to the court's ruling in favor of Darrell Vaz, and how significant is this decision politically?
Yeah, so for me, I think this development is bigger than Dayton Campbell or the People's National Party. I think it raises broader concern about the standard of political discourse in Jamaica. This is a long-standing concern. Obviously, within the context of democratic political competition, we expect politicians to challenge each other and criticize each other. I think that's a part of how democracy operates. But those challenges ought to be based on are grounded in facts and evidence. So while this legal matter involves Dayton Campbell specifically, I think the bigger takeaway for me is that the ruling reaffirms the expectations of the standards of how politics ought to be practiced in Jamaica. I think that is my first takeaway from this case, right? I think that it is important for politicians to realize that they occupy positions of influence, and their statements can shape and public narratives and so forth. And in today's digital age in particular, those statements made on the platforms, they don't disappear. And once a meeting ends per se, everything you see is recorded and shared across various platforms and can eventually become evidence in court. So in this context, we expect politicians to use their platforms more responsibly. I think that is the takeaway here for me.
So do you believe this judgment sets a new standard for accountability in political communication?
It does. It says that it is a humbling reminder for me that public officials should hold themselves to a higher standard when using public platforms. As I've noted before, there is absolutely room in politics for robust criticism. There's room for issue-based debating. There's also room for you to question the performance and the track record of governance and so forth. And occasionally, there's room for occasional political jab. But we ought to make a clear distinction between criticizing record and making serious allegations that may be defamatory if they cannot be supported by credible evidence. This is in light of the fact that when you enter representational politics, integrity, character, and reputation are your most valued asset. And if somebody attacks your reputation and integrity or character, that can amount to a loss of political capital, right? So that carries significant implications for a politician. So hopefully this serves a lesson not just for Dayton Campbell, but for politicians across the political divide.
So, Mr. Gordon, some have described the ruling as a vindication for Mr. Vaz. From a political perspective, how important is that?
So one thing, I have to credit the data of accepting responsibility and issuing a public apology in accordance with the settlement. So when we support one party or the other, accountability matters, and this ruling reinforces accountability. And I think that he has done himself a favor by apologizing. He has scored a public victory to an extent by strengthening the public perception of politicians being accountable. So he by apologizing and acknowledging his mistakes, he has brought a closure to this matter rather than having the debate drag on indefinitely. Right? I think from the perspective, but generally, I don't think it will have significant implications for the People's National Party. And let me tell you why. It will have an implications from the perspective of how Jamaicans who are non-aligned or non-committed view party. I think incidents like these do more harm than good because they reinforce negative perceptions among Jamaicans that already have about parties. And this contributes to cynicism, voter fatigue, voter fatigue, and ultimately apathy. Having said that, I don't think this alone will significantly change party support. Jamaica remains a highly partisan political environment, and many committed supporters will continue to support interpret these issues when they arise to partisan and elect. So a lot of people supporters may say, well, those on the other side are guilty of the same thing. It's a part of course, in our political culture. I think we're putting much more among the independent or undecided voters. So their assessment will likely depend on whether or not they see this as an isolated issue, or a lapse in judgment, or evidence of a broader weakness within, Jamaica's political culture. So I don't see voters and the public as being homogeneous. There's the partisans who will likely see these developments through partisan lens. And then you have the uncommitted voters who may assess the implications of these developments or in terms of how they see or how they view or perceive political parties. So those are the two major considerations, right?
So would you say, Mr. Gordon, that this decision could make politicians more cautious about the allegations they make against their opponents?
Yes, it definitely could make them more cautious because what this ruling confirms is that if you make statements that are libelous and defame the character of individuals, then you may be FT punitive costs may be imposed upon you, and therefore moving forward, politicians will not have an incentive to be more responsible in how they use public platforms and influence in order to avoid, the same cost that was imposed upon Dayton by the court. It's a price. It's a cost in terms. It's a monetary cost, but it's also a cost in terms of his ego because he has had to issue a public apology to his political nemesis. And politicians looking on will say, I don't want to be placed in a similar position. So I will act and use my platform and influence responsibly to avoid similar punitive costs. Right? But the thing is, let me just tell you why this thing may repeat itself and continues to repeat itself. It's part of the finance. So the public speaking is really about the art of persuasion, and this is something we teach in school. And there are generally two ways that politicians try to persuade the voters. Right? One is logos. They try to appeal to some appeal to the logic and the reason, and the other is pathos, where they appeal to the emotion. Unfortunately, within our political culture, which is highly partisan and highly adversarial, emotional appeals tend to have more tend to resonate better with voters than reason. Right? So campaign meetings in themselves are highly charged spaces, and politicians are trying to energize their supporters in those spaces. And in those moments, it is very easy for many of them to go off message and move away from discussing policy to personal attack. And the objective here would be to get an emotional reaction from the supporters, unite them around a common enemy or a common point of frustration. The problem is that in trying to achieve that emotional impact, politicians very often are tempted to